We're going to be taking a look and listen at the Rode NT1 5th Gen. In this video, I wanted to just do some sound comparisons with this microphone and compare it most directly against the AKG C214, which is another large diaphragm condenser microphone that I happen to have. And we might do a couple other comparisons with some different microphones. I'm also going to enlist my wife to come up and do some recordings. So if you do want to know how these microphones sound on a woman's voice, then check that out as well. If you want to skip around, of course, I've got chapter markers so you can go to the relevant portion of the video. I just want to talk briefly about the NT1 5th Gen, what's new and different, and of course it is a USB and XLR combo mic, and the USB functionality is pretty interesting with this one in that it allows you to do 32-bit float recording if you so choose, although you can also do 24-bit via the USB connection. I don't really want to go into that in this video for a variety of reasons, but if that is something that you really want to know more about, there are a ton of videos that have dived into that. Rode has a bunch on its own website and YouTube channel that can really walk you through more about what that is. So in this video, again, just want to focus more on the sound comparison and, just kind of what you get with this microphone and my thoughts about using it in this use case. So I'm definitely focusing on what's relevant to me, and that is doing content creation, talking at camera. Not a musician, so we're not going to really touch on how this microphone performs as a microphone for singing, vocals, or instruments. I'm just not that cool or talented. Rode says there's been no changes to the capsule or really the design of the NT1 5th Gen. So if you have one of the older gen NT1s and you like the way it sounds, there's really no need to upgrade unless you want to take advantage of that USB-C and in particular the 32-bit float functionality of the 5th Gen. I'm recording both of these microphones simultaneously into the original Rodecaster Pro using the multi-track, and it's been a long time since I've done that, so hopefully I'm actually doing that correctly. But that should allow me to switch back and forth between the microphones when I edit the video, and of course pay attention to the text on screen so you know which of the microphones you are listening to. Both are running into the Rodecaster Pro in the generic condenser mic setting. No processing is applied. Both are set to 17 decibels of gain. Kind of lets you know that they're very similar in how sensitive they are. The Rode NT1 5th Gen retails for about $250 or retails for $250 US. AKG is considerably more expensive, but I often find that it's not at its full retail price. You can usually find it for less, but it is retailing, I think, for $480. I think that what Rode sent me is the retail package, but I'm not 100% sure. Of course, you get the microphone, you get this really robust, very overwhelming shock mount with it. Mine also came with this really great red XLR cable. It's a very nice cable. It's pretty long. And then it comes with the pop filter here, which we'll check out here in a little bit. Of course, it does come with the USB-C cable. If you do want to use the USB-C functionality, this is a really great cable, by the way. As far as USB-C goes, it is USB-C on both sides, and it's nice and flat, kind of rolls up or coils up pretty nice, more like an audio cable. And it's about, I would say, 3 meters, so probably 9-10 feet long. Pretty long for a USB-C cable. And then lastly, it does come with this little pouch to store the microphone, keep dust out and stuff like that. You can't run both the XLR and the USB-C simultaneously. The USB-C port is actually wedged up there within the XLR connection as well. The shock mount is impressively well built, overbuilt perhaps. It's all metal construction, of course, the nylon bands that act as the shock absorption. It has a 3/8 inch and 5/8 inch thread in the bottom of the mount, so you can put it on any kind of boom arm, boom stand, mic stand without using an adapter. Of course, you can loosen this and change the angle of the microphone. And then here on the front, it also has the little receptacle to place the pop filter. So you can just thread in, try to move this so I don't bump everything. Just thread this in here. You can loosen up this top collar to get it positioned straight and then tighten that. And then it has obviously this angle to adjust, and then it has this up here, so you can really get this positioned just how you need it. There we go. That is quite an assembly for the pop filter. And of course this works really, really well. It's going to do a really great job of helping to negate the plosives that both of these microphones are pretty susceptible to. That's a pretty common trait of a large diaphragm condenser. Whatever, you know what it sounds like when you go, Peter Piper prefers the pod mic for podcasts. 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 Anyway, it's really well built. It's nicely designed. It's very functional. But for my use case, it's also a little bit overwhelming. It's a little bit much. It's a little intense, I think, Rode. Only because, for me, the video component is important. So having such a large, overbuilt sort of shock mount, and then you combine it with the whole pop filter mechanism and mount, and then the pop filter itself, it is a little bit bulky. And of course, it's obscuring a good chunk of my fabulous face. And of course, we don't want that. But if the audio is the most important thing, then this obviously is a really great solution. It is also pretty heavy. I've got these two tabletop mic stands. I've got this one from RA that I've had for years, and this works really well. It's got a nice, heavy, flat, large diameter base. And then I just picked up this one more recently, and this one is not heavy duty enough or sturdy enough to hold the NT1 with the shock mount on it. It'll just tip over. You can see it's, wanting to tip over even with this AKG on here. So the AKG does not come with a pop filter. It just comes with a foam windscreen, which isn't necessarily designed to help with plosives, etc., but it does do that as well. So we can just kind of plop that on there and try out the plosive comparison again with the AKG and the windscreen. Peter Piper prefers the pod mic for podcasts. Peter Piper prefers the pod mic for podcasts. Both of these are really well constructed, really well built. Of course, I already talked about the shock mount, but the microphones themselves also feel really nice, very premium, very sturdy, nice details and attention to detail in their construction. The NT1 doesn't have any switches or buttons. There's no low cut or pad on the NT1. AKG C214 does have a low cut switch, and it's a pretty aggressive low cut. It actually starts cutting out, I think, at about 160 hertz, I believe. So that will make a noticeable difference if you're doing, voiceover work in cutting out some of the low frequencies that will be in a lot of male voices in particular. It's probably not the best option for just switching on to cut out some, air conditioner rumble or something that might be in your environment. The AKG also has a 20 dB pad on it. So if you're recording a really, really loud source of audio, and it's kind of overwhelming the equipment that you're trying to record into, or maybe it's too loud for the microphone itself, whatever, you can just switch on that 20 dB pad, and then it will obviously lower its sensitivity by 20 dB. While I have this in hand, let's go ahead and do a little handling test and an off-axis rejection test. So if you were to handhold the Rode NT1 as if it were a stage mic, and you maybe switched hands with it, this is what it would sound like, and maybe it would pick up some handling noise. I don't really know because I don't have headphones on. And then if you really thought it was a stage mic and wanted to talk into the top of it like this is how it would sound. And then if you were even more confused and talking into the side, this is how it would sound. And then if you're like me and you didn't know which was the front when you first opened it up, you would talk into the side that said Rode NT1 on it. This is how that sounds. And then the other side, this is how that sounds. And of course, coming back to the front of the microphone, that's how that sounds. As I mentioned, you've got the pad here. So this is what it sounds like without the 20 dB pad. And then this is what it sounds like if you engage the 20 dB pad. That was hopefully a little bit quieter. And then this is the low cut filter enabled. So this is what it sounds like if you enable that low cut filter. And then this is what it sounds like without the low cut filter enabled. Maybe you could hear me passing the mic or turning the mic around in my hands, but now if you wanted to switch hands and just hold it and talk into it, caress it a little bit, this is how it sounds. We've handled the mics. Let's see how well they actually reject noises of the desk. If you were to forget that you're recording audio and start tapping on the table or the desk, this is what that sounds like. This is what it sounds like if you tap on the base of these stands, and then the stem of the stands, and then this is what it sounds like if you tap on the shock mount, and then this is what it sounds like if you tap on the microphone. So I can't hear which one is doing better or worse, or if they're the same, but we'll come back and talk about it. Which one did a better job of rejecting all of that noise? In terms of the handling noise, this is like no contest, no competition. The Rode does not do a good job, and that's probably the biggest downside for me, or the biggest disappointment, is that it's just not very well isolated. And it's you can see, if you look in the back of the C214, you can see how that capsule is suspended with another sort of like wire shock mount, so just the capsule itself, and it's harder to see into past the grill of the NT1, but I don't see anything like that on the NT1. And you could obviously hear how susceptible this is to really any handling noise, and it just sort of rumbles and just makes a whole show of it, whereas this one is like as quiet as it could be. So that's one major differentiation between these two mics in terms of how they're built. Other than that, though, I mean, that's what the shock mount's for. Also, just, you know, you've got to be a little bit more cognizant and careful of what you're doing when you're recording audio. To the Red-Headed League, on account of the bequest of the late Ezekiah Hopkins of Lebanon, Pennsylvania, USA, there is now another vacancy open which entitles a member of the league to a salary of £4 a week for purely nominal services. On account of the bequest of the late Ezekiah Hopkins of Lebanon, Pennsylvania, USA, there is now another vacancy open which entitles a member of the league to a salary of £4 a week for purely nominal services. On account of the bequest of the late Ezekiah Hopkins of Lebanon, Pennsylvania, USA, on account of the bequest of the late Ezekiah Hopkins of Lebanon, Pennsylvania, USA, there is now another vacancy open which entitles a member of the league to a salary of £4 a week for purely nominal services. On account of the bequest of the late Ezekiah Hopkins of Lebanon, Pennsylvania, USA, on account of the bequest of the late Ezekiah Hopkins of Lebanon, Pennsylvania, USA, there is now another vacancy open which entitles a member of the league to a salary of £4 a week for purely nominal services.
Our visitor bore every mark of being an average, commonplace British tradesman, obese, pompous, and slow. He wore rather baggy gray shepherd's check trousers, a not over-clean black frock coat, unbuttoned in the front, and a drab waistcoat with a heavy brassy Albert chain, and a squared pierced bit of metal dangling down as an ornament. A frayed top hat and a faded brown overcoat with a wrinkled velvet collar lay upon a chair beside him. Altogether, look as I would, there was nothing remarkable about the man save his blazing red head.
We've heard all the comparisons. We've run the NT1 up against the AKG C214 and a couple other microphones. How do you think it sounds? Which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments. The great thing about the NT1 in terms of the sound is it's a very neutral and natural sounding microphone. That might seem a little boring, I guess, depending on your perspective. If you want a microphone to sound a little bit more dynamic right out of the mic, as opposed to having to go in and do some processing to the microphone yourself, then it might not be your choice. But I do think that just in terms of a flexible microphone that's going to work for just about anybody, it's really hard to go wrong with the NT1. I think the C214 has a much more distinct sound quality to it. Whether or not it suits you is going to depend on your voice and on your environment, what you're doing, etc. I don't think it's going to be as flexible as the NT1 is. I think the NT1 has always been kind of a steal at the price. I mean, $250. Of course, it depends on your perspective, but for microphones, especially a large diaphragm condenser microphone that has a really, I don't know, just a very clean, crisp sound, it's really hard to beat the NT1 in terms of value. I hope you got something out of that. If I left anything out, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you know where they go. And as always, I appreciate you watching the video, and maybe I'll see you in another one.